안녕하세요. Good evening, everyone. My name is Young-Hoon Han. I'm a global impact grad intern and a staff member of International House. I'm also from Incheon, South Korea, and a student at the University of Chicago studying social service administration. On behalf of the fellow residents and staff, it is my pleasure to welcome you to International House and to tonight's event. This event is sponsored by the International House Global Voices Lecture Series, Korean Students Organization, UChicago Amnesty International, Partnership for the Advancement of Refugee Rights, Korean Consulate in Chicago, Korean Council for Reconciliation and Cooperation, and the National Unification Advisory Council in Chicago. I hope all of you will return to join International House for the remaining 2016 and 2017 academic year to attend other Global Voices lectures and performances. Global Voices public programming advances cross-cultural understanding and opportunities for civic discourse on community, national, and world affairs through music and dance performances, films, lecture, conferences, and roundtable discussions. You can find information about these programs on the literature at the front entrance. Please make sure to sign up for our mailing list in order to receive announcements about all our exciting upcoming events. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce you to Stephen Liu, the organizer of today's event, Voices from North Korea, who will begin tonight's very special event. Thanks.
Thank you, Young. Hello, everyone, and good evening. My name is Stephen Liu, and I'm the current president of the student organization Emancipate North Koreans. 3 years ago, I attended a Voices from North Korea event in this very room, and I became inspired to work on behalf of North Korean defectors. And I hope today's event can inspire others to do so as well. Before we start today's event, I'd like to thank some of our sponsors, and there are a lot of them, so please bear with me. First off, I'd like to thank our student organizations that we worked with to make this program happen. There are Amnesty International, Madison Lowe was a great help, the Partnership for the Advancement of Refugee Rights, Christina Kano, and the Korean Students Organization, and Jimmy Lee. Next, some of the outside organizations that help sponsor events and gave us some of the posters that you see around the hall. The National Reunification Advisory Council in Chicago, Mung Kyu Lee, the Korean Council for Reconciliation and Cooperation, Charlie Cho, and also a department here at the University of Chicago, the East Asian Languages and Civilizations. This is Don Brennan. I'd also like to thank Itak CEO of the Korean American Association for coming, and lastly, the Korean Consulate, Mr. Jungkook Lee, Jiwon, and Mr. Han-Hoon Lee for helping provide food for this event. Thank you. Lastly, I'd like to thank the people from the Emancipate North Koreans organization, or ENOC for short, for helping making this event true. I couldn't have done this without my publicist, Caitlin Hoagland, and our campaign manager, Madeline Kim. So thank you to them. And I couldn't have done this also without our outreach director, Yoo So Yoon, and the founder and CEO of Emancipate North Koreans, Andrew Hong. So thank you. Lastly, and most importantly, I'd like to thank our North Korean defectors who are here today, Mr. Larry Lee and Mr. Caleb Cho, for agreeing to share their stories. It is not easy for them to share these stories, and anyone who reads the news knows that North Korean defectors usually do not share their stories because they are threatened by their government. It is with great danger that they are able to be here today, and I hope that everyone is, listens to them with open ears. I'd like to end on this note. A lot of people notice that think I'm Korean, but I'm actually not. I'm American, but I'm ethnically Chinese, and I think this, raises an important point. This is not, a Korean issue. This is not an Asian issue, but it's a human issue. And I hope that everyone here, regardless of ethnicity, race, or religion, whatever, can help work towards helping North Korean defectors. With that, I'd like to introduce the Consul General, Mr. Jungkook Lee.
Good evening, everyone. It is my great pleasure to be here with you, with all of you this evening. I would like to extend my appreciation to students and faculty members involved in organizing this meaningful event. And my special thanks go to today's speaker, Professor Sheena Greitens, and also North Korean refugees, Caleb Cho and Larry Lee. International news media these days frequently covers the security threat by the North Korea to the neighboring South Korea, Japan, and United States by a series of nuclear weapon and ballistic missile tests. The recent announcement by North Korean regime that they have successfully developed intercontinental missiles which could reach the US mainland, together with the video clips showing the missiles soaring to the sky, drew attention and condemnation as well, considering its grave security threat to the US and its allied countries. While North Korean nuclear program and missiles should be an issue to be addressed with a higher priority, but we should not forget that the other dark side of North Korea also should be gravely touched. That is the human rights issue of North Korea. North Korea has been the most oppressive place and the most isolated countries in the world for long. Kim Jong-un regime, like his grandfather and father, still subject his citizens to tight controls over every aspect of their lives without freedom we enjoy in other parts of the world. There are still 120,000 political prisoners in forced camps and detention facilities like gulags in the Soviet Union. Over the last 15 years, more than 30,000 North Koreans who fled the land of oppression and starvation to South Korea, and the US have vividly testified how the North Korean regime deprived them of the humanity and enforced to serve as slaves to the regime. For many years, international community have addressed the brutal situation in North Korea. Annual human rights reports issued by the State Department of State, US Department of State, have described the dire human rights situation in North Korea over the last several decades. The US Congress passed the North Korean Human Rights Act in 2004. In 2014, Illinois State Senate and House of Representatives also adopted the North Korean Human Rights Resolution for the first time in the US state legislature. It is not strange that North Korean human rights violations have been addressed vigorously by the international organizations, notably the UN. Not only the UN Human Rights Council or the UN General Assembly, but even the UN Security Council have attested to the gravity of the issue. The Commission of Inquiry report on the North Korean human rights in 2014 in particular brought to the fore the systematic and widespread human rights violations in North Korea. The assassination of Kim Jong-nam in February at the Kuala Lumpur International airport truly reflects that reckless and inhumane executions have been continuously committed by the North Korean leadership, even to leader's brother, when he is deemed to be a challenger to the monopoly of a political power. Unfortunately, the human rights situation in North Korea remains unchanged despite of international condemnations for many years. This factor, however, does not justify that international community should give up its efforts to change the situation. I hope today's lecture and testimony would not only provide us with a better understanding on North Korean human rights situation, but also enlighten us on what more we can do to improve the freedom, human rights, and dignity of the North Korean people. Once again, I appreciate those who made this event possible, and wish everyone in attendance continue to participate in efforts to raise awareness about the human rights situation in North Korea. Thank you very much.
Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Sheena Chestnut-Grynens. Sheena Chestnut-Grynens is a North Korean expert. She is an assistant professor at the University of Missouri. She's a non-resident senior fellow at the Center for East Asian Policy Studies at the Brookings Institution, and a whole bunch of other stuff. We're kind of punched for time, so I'd like to thank Sheena. She first came to Powerhouse before we even planned this event, so we really appreciate having her tonight.
Good evening, and thank you all very much for being here tonight. Thank you very much to Stephen, to the sponsors of tonight's event, to Consul General, Deputy Consul General Lee, to the refugees and the team at Enoch who make this event possible. It's really a pleasure to be here this evening. As was mentioned a few minutes ago, North Korea's nuclear and missile program are the issue that most often dominates the headlines. Many of you probably saw the recent news about an intercontinental ballistic missile that's been in development, and the series of tests that have placed it closer and closer to the point of being able to reach the United States homeland, including those of us here tonight. You saw the assassination of Kim Jong-nam, the half-brother of the current leader, in an event that was believed to involve chemical weapons at a public airport in Malaysia, and North Korea's cybersecurity attacks, including stealing about $81 million from a bank bank accounts that belonged to Bangladesh, but which were held at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York. So there are serious security challenges to the United States, to its allies, including South Korea, and to the international community that are posed by North Korea. But what we wanted to focus on here tonight is the human experience and the human face of North Korea and the North Korean issue. North Korea has been ruled by one family since the country was founded after the Second World War, and one man until the 1990s. And right around the time that Kim Il-sung passed away, the country experienced agricultural crisis, loss of subsidies from the Soviet Union, a decrease in support from China, and the result was a famine that is estimated to have killed as much as 10% of the country's population. That is referred to as the Arduous March, and it precipitated two key changes that I think it's important to understand before the individuals take the stage that you're going to hear from tonight. The first of those in this arduous march is simply the fact that a tremendous loss of human life and the sheer degree of suffering inside the country propelled people to leave. And people started leaving North Korea for the first time in relatively large numbers, despite the border controls, during this period in the mid-1990s. And that's a trend that has continued up to the present day. The second thing that happened is that the public distribution system, the state-run part of the economy that gave people ration cards and rations instead of having them provide for themselves through a market system, collapsed. And people were forced to turn to the black market and to come up with creative ways simply to try to keep themselves, their children, and their family members alive. And that produced a sort of bottom-up marketization process, much of it only loosely tolerated by the North Korean government, that again has existed to this day and produces a system that is used to get people out of North Korea today, and that is also used as one of the few ways to get information in to the families and the people who still remain in the country and don't have the opportunity to leave. So those underground networks, which started developing in the 1990s, have, over the course of now about 2 decades, created some small space, and I do mean small, for human freedom, and created some ability for people to survive outside dependence on a state that has repeatedly failed them. But it's also true that under Kim Jong-un, who took power in the end of December 2011, beginning of 2012, after his father's death, it's become more difficult to leave the country. Border security has been tightened. Some of the security measures that had been sort of loosened with this marketization process were sort of re-tightened. And the number of defections and escapes from North Korea is lower today than it was at the time that Kim Jong-un took power. And so I hope you understand that for the people who are speaking here tonight, if they have family in North Korea, there are real security issues that exist for them, and that if it sounds like they're not answering a question directly, that may be for a very good reason, to protect people who remain inside the country. And I hope you'll understand and respect that about the conversation that you'll hear tonight. The 2 individuals that you are about to meet left North Korea and journeyed to the United States, which is a fairly incredible act of courage to leave the country and also to come to the United States when the vast majority of people who leave North Korea go to South Korea. There are about 30,000 North Korean refugees and defectors in South Korea today. There are about 225 who have been resettled in the United States under the North Korean Human Rights Act, which was first passed in 2004 and signed into law by President George W. Bush. That act has been renewed since the original signing, and so we have about between 10 and 25 people who arrive in the United States from North Korea as refugees every year. I've had the privilege and the pleasure of getting to know some of these folks here through Enoch, the organization that put on tonight's event, and have spent some time talking with the individuals that you're going to meet. For me, that's been because of a project that I'm working on, which is about what we can learn about democratic citizenship from people who came from a system that was anything but democratic. And it's been a privilege and an honor to learn from these individuals about what democracy, citizenship, and participation mean to them. And I think that's something that's a really unique, they bring a unique perspective to that question and to a number of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. So I think Chicago is really, really fortunate to have this community and a program like Enoch based here in Chicago. And it's my pleasure and honor to be able to provide a little bit of context for the stories that you're about to hear, and then to be able to say thank you to all of you for coming, for your interest in listening, and for whatever you choose to do going out of here to help others understand what is going on in North Korea and how we can support the courageous individuals who have left the country and who are now our neighbors in our communities. So again, thank you so much and enjoy tonight's event.
Thank you, Dr. Greitens. Before I introduce our defectors and Andrew Hong, I'd like to thank Dr. Chang for calling the meeting that led to the origination of this event, and Dr. Agnes An for helping with the propelling me through this event. So let's start. Mr. Caleb Cho attended a university in North Korea. He resettled in the United States and is currently studying his master's. I can talk a bit more about Luke, who was a student at the at Empower House. I personally taught him, and I remember, one time I bought him coffee, and then after that, he kept hounding me so he could get back at me, so he could buy me coffee too. So, some really good stories with, our friends here. But and lastly, Andrew Hong, who is the founder and CEO of Enoch right now. I can't say enough about Andrew. He's the soul of Enoch, and I really hope that you guys can be inspired by the conversation they have today.